Most people will step into 2026 the same way they stepped into every other year of their lives, carrying their past like a heavy suitcase they refuse to set down. They'll make resolutions about who they want to become, goals about what they want to achieve, and promises about how things will be different this time. And by February, maybe March if they're really determined, they'll be right back where they started, living the same patterns, making the same excuses, being the same person they've always been. But what if I told you there's a completely different way to approach this? What if the secret isn't about becoming your future self at all? What if it's about recognizing that you already are that person and you've just been pretending to be someone smaller? See, I learned something about 30 years ago that changed everything for me. I was sitting in my small apartment, barely making ends meet, wondering why some people seemed to have life figured out while I was stuck in the same cycle year after year. I'd set goals, I'd make plans, I'd get motivated at seminars and excited about new opportunities, but nothing stuck. Nothing fundamentally changed. And one day it hit me like a lightning bolt. I wasn't trying to become a different person. I was spending all my energy being the person I'd always been. Every morning I'd wake up and put on my old identity like a familiar coat. I'd think the same thoughts, make the same types of decisions, have the same conversations with myself. I was unconsciously rehearsing being the old Jim Rohn, and then wondering why my life wasn't changing. That's when I realized something profound. The future version of yourself, the one who's successful, healthy, financially free, living with purpose. That person isn't waiting somewhere down the road for you to slowly become them. That version of you exists right now as a possibility, as a potential, as a complete and fully formed identity. And the only thing separating you from that person is a decision, not a process, not a journey, not years of grinding and struggling, a decision. The decision to stop being who you were and start being who you are meant to be. Think about this for a moment. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are two versions of you sitting in that chair. There's the version that's been shaped by your past, your mistakes, your limitations, your fears, your old stories about what's possible for you. This is the version that knows all the reasons why things won't work, why you can't do certain things, why you are the way you are. This version has evidence. It has history. It has a track record. And then there's another version, the one who's already overcome what you're currently facing, the one who's already developed the disciplines you're trying to build, the one who's already living the life you say you want. This version doesn't hope things will work out. This version knows they will, because from where this version stands, they already have. Most people make the mistake of thinking they need to travel from one version to the other. They think it's a long road with many steps, and they better pack supplies for the journey. But I'm telling you, it's not a journey. It's a shift. It's a choice to stop identifying with who you were and start identifying with who you're becoming. And that choice can happen in an instant. I watched a man do this once. He was in his late 40s, working a job he hated, 25 pounds overweight, relationship falling apart. Typical midlife crisis situation. And he came to one of my seminars looking for answers, looking for some technique or strategy that would fix his life. But something I said triggered something in him. I said, stop trying to become successful. Start being successful right now, today, with what you have. And I saw his face change. Something clicked. The next time I saw him, 6 months later, he was a completely different person. Not because he'd achieved all his goals yet, he hadn't. But because he'd made this shift in identity, he stopped being the guy who was trying to get in shape and became a healthy person who was reclaiming his fitness. He stopped being an employee who dreamed of starting a business and became an entrepreneur who happened to still have a day job for now. He stopped being a husband who was trying to save his marriage and became a man worthy of a great relationship, whether his wife joined him in that vision or not. The difference might sound subtle, but it's everything. When you're trying to become something, you're constantly reinforcing that you're not that thing yet. You're living in lack, in not enough, in someday. But when you make the shift to being that person now, everything changes. Your decisions change because you're not making them from where you are. You're making them from where you're going. Your habits change because you're not trying to develop discipline. You're simply doing what someone like you does. Your whole energy changes because you're not chasing anymore. You're living. Here's what I want you to understand. Your current identity, the one you think is the real you, it's not. It's just a collection of past decisions, old beliefs, and habitual ways of thinking that you've practiced so many times. They feel permanent. But they're not permanent. They're just familiar. And there's a big difference between what's familiar and what's true. The truth is, you're not defined by your past unless you choose to be. You're not limited by what you've done before unless you decide you are. You're not stuck being the person you were yesterday unless you wake up tomorrow and volunteer for that assignment again. So here's the question that changes everything, and I want you to really sit with this. Who would you be if you already had everything you're working toward? Not what would you do. Who would you be? How would that person think? How would they handle a bad day? How would they make decisions? How would they spend their time? How would they talk to themselves in the mirror? How would they show up in the world? Because here's the secret, that person wouldn't be trying to become anything. They'd just be living as who they are. And that's exactly what you need to start doing right now, today, before 2026 even arrives. The successful people I've studied over the years, the ones who've built great businesses, wonderful families, meaningful lives, they all figured this out. They didn't wait for success to change them. They changed first, and success had no choice but to follow. They didn't live in the gap between where they were and where they wanted to be. They closed that gap in their minds first, and then their circumstances eventually caught up to match their new identity. They understood something most people miss. Life doesn't happen to you, it responds to you, and it responds to who you're being, not who you're trying to become. Now, here's what most people miss when they hear about this identity shift, this idea of being your future self right now. They think it's just positive thinking. They think it's just walking around pretending to be someone you're not, faking it till you make it. And that's not what I'm talking about at all. Because your future self, the successful version, the healthy version, the purposeful version, that person didn't get there by accident. That person got there through a series of small, seemingly insignificant daily decisions that most people overlook because they're too busy looking for the big break, the lucky opportunity, the shortcut. Let me tell you about my own life. When I was 25 years old, I had nothing. I mean nothing. I was broke, unhealthy, confused about my direction. And I had a mentor who changed my life with one simple assignment. He told me to read for 30 minutes every single day. That's it. Not take a course, not go back to school, not make some massive life change. Just read 30 minutes every day. And I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but my first thought was, that's it? That's the secret? I was looking for something dramatic, something that would create immediate results, but I trusted him, so I did it. I started reading every morning before I went to work, and for the first week, nothing happened. For the first month, I didn't see any difference in my bank account or my circumstances. But something was happening inside me that I couldn't see yet. Those 30 minutes every morning were doing something more important than giving me information. They were changing who I was being. See, the unsuccessful version of me didn't read. The unsuccessful version of me watched television, complained about his circumstances, and wondered why life was so hard. But the version of me who was reading every morning, that person was different. That person was investing in himself. That person was choosing growth over comfort. That person was preparing for a future he couldn't see yet. After about 90 days, I noticed something strange. I was making different decisions, not because I was trying to, but because I was thinking differently. The books I was reading were putting new ideas in my head, and those ideas were changing my perception of what was possible. I started seeing opportunities I'd walked past 100 times before. I started having conversations differently. I started showing up to work as a different person. And within a year, my income had doubled. Within 3 years, I was making more in a month than I used to make in a year. But here's the key. The reading didn't cause the success. The reading changed who I was. and who I was attracted success naturally. That's how daily disciplines work. They're not really about the action itself. They're about who you become by consistently doing them. Your future self got to where they are through these small, daily choices that nobody else noticed. While everyone else was looking for the elevator to success, your future self was taking the stairs, one step at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. And that's exactly what you need to start doing right now. But here's where it gets interesting. You can't just do the disciplines of your future self. You have to live the entire lifestyle of that person before you have the life. And this is where most people get confused. They think lifestyle is about what you have, the house, the car, the possessions. But lifestyle is about how you live, not what you own. It's about how you spend your time, how you treat your body, how you manage your money, how you handle problems, how you interact with people. Your future self has a completely different lifestyle than your current self, and you can adopt that lifestyle today with exactly what you have right now. I remember when I made this shift personally. I was still struggling financially, but I started handling money like a wealthy person would. I started tithing 10%, saving 10%, and being intentional with every dollar. Now, 10% of almost nothing is still almost nothing, but that wasn't the point. The point was I was being a financially disciplined person. I was living that identity, and money responded to that. It had to, because the universe rewards who you're being, not what you're hoping for. Same thing with health. I decided to start living as a healthy person before I looked like a healthy person. That meant making different choices at breakfast. It meant taking the stairs when I didn't feel like it. It meant going to bed earlier when I wanted to stay up late. Nobody could see these choices. There was no immediate reward, but I wasn't doing them for immediate rewards. I was doing them because that's what healthy people do, and I had decided I was a healthy person. The body had no choice but to eventually match the identity. Here's the truth that changed everything for me. You don't get paid for the hour you work. You get paid for the value you bring to the hour. And the value you bring is determined by who you've become, not by how hard you try. I could work 12 hours a day at minimum wage, or I could work 4 hours a day doing something that pays extraordinarily well. The difference isn't the time. The difference is the value. And value comes from personal development. It comes from working harder on yourself than you do on your job. This is the economics of personal development that most people never figure out. They spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week working on their job, making someone else rich, building someone else's dream, and they spend 0 hours working on themselves, 0 hours reading, 0 hours learning new skills, 0 hours developing their character, their communication, their thinking, and then they wonder why their income doesn't change year after year. They're bringing the same value to the marketplace that they brought last year, so the marketplace is paying them the same amount. It's simple economics. But when you start investing in yourself, when you start developing new skills, expanding your knowledge, improving your communication, strengthening your character, you become more valuable. And when you become more valuable, you don't have to chase money. Money chases you. Opportunities chase you. Success chases you. Because the marketplace is always looking for value, and you've just increased what you're worth. Your future self understood this. Your future self has knowledge that your current self doesn't have. Your future self has skills that your current self hasn't developed yet. Your future self has character strengths that your current self is still building. And the gap between where you are and where that version of you stands, that gap is filled with daily disciplines, with reading, with learning, with practicing, with failing and getting back up, with doing things you don't feel like doing because they need to be done. I'll tell you something else. Your future self makes decisions differently than you're making them right now. When your current self faces a choice, you probably ask yourself, what do I feel like doing? Or what's easiest? Or what will make me comfortable right now? But your future self asks completely different questions. That version of you asks, what would be best for me long term, and what decision would I be proud of a year from now? And what choice would move me closer to who I'm becoming? See the difference? It's not about what feels good in the moment. It's about what serves the vision. And this is where discipline really comes in. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do things you hate. Discipline is about loving your future self more than you love your current comfort. It's about making choices today that your future self will thank you for. Every time you choose the book over the television, you're sending a gift to your future. Every time you choose the workout over the couch, you're investing in who you're becoming. Every time you choose the difficult conversation over avoiding conflict, you're building character that will pay dividends for decades. But you've got to understand something critical here. Motivation is worthless without a system. Motivation gets you started. A system keeps you going. Your future self doesn't operate on motivation. That person operates on a system of habits and routines that run automatically. They don't wake up every morning and decide whether or not to read, they read. They don't debate whether to work out, they work out. They don't wonder if they should work on their business, they work on their business. It's not a decision anymore. It's just what they do. It's who they are. So if you want to step into 2026 as your future self, you need to install that person's daily system right now. What does your future self do first thing in the morning? Do that. How does your future self spend their evenings? Do that. What does your future self say no to? Say no to that. What does your future self say yes to? Say yes to that. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect time. Stop waiting to feel ready. Your future self never felt ready either. They just started. They just did it. And that's exactly what you need to do. Now, you can have all the personal disciplines in the world, you can read every book and develop every skill, but if you're surrounding yourself with the wrong people, you're going to struggle. And this is one of the hardest truths I ever had to face in my own life. The people you spend time with will determine who you become more than almost any other factor. I've said this for years and I'll say it again. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Their attitudes become your attitudes. Their habits become your habits. Their dreams become your dreams. Or worse, their lack of dreams becomes your lack of dreams. When I started making changes in my life, when I started reading and growing and developing myself, something uncomfortable happened. My old friends didn't get it. They didn't understand why I wasn't hanging out at the bar anymore. They didn't understand why I was reading instead of watching the game. They made jokes about it. They'd say things like, "Oh, here comes the professor," or "You think you're better than us now?" And it hurt. These were people I'd known for years, people I cared about. But I had to make a choice. I could stay comfortable with them and remain who I was, or I could step into who I was becoming and accept that some people wouldn't come with me. I chose growth. And it was painful. There were friendships that faded. There were people who stopped calling. There were family members who thought I was getting too big for my britches, as they say. But here's what I learned. Your future self has different conversations than your current self. Your future self talks about ideas, opportunities, growth, contribution. Your current self might be having conversations about other people, complaints, problems, all the reasons why things don't work. And if you're serious about stepping into that future version of you, you've got to upgrade your conversations before anything else changes. See, there's this phenomenon I've watched happen over and over again. When someone starts to grow, when someone starts to change, the people around them get uncomfortable. Not because they're bad people, not because they don't love you, but because your growth holds up a mirror to their stagnation. Your change challenges their excuses. Your progress makes them confront the fact that they've been sitting still. And instead of being inspired by you, instead of joining you, many of them will unconsciously try to pull you back down. It's like crabs in a bucket. When one crab tries to climb out, the others pull it back down. Not because they're malicious, just because that's what happens when you try to rise above the level everyone else has accepted as normal. I had an uncle who did this to me. Every time I'd share something I was excited about, some new opportunity or idea, he'd immediately tell me why it wouldn't work. He'd list all the people who'd tried and failed. He'd remind me of my past mistakes. He'd say he was just being realistic, just trying to protect me from disappointment. But what he was really doing was trying to keep me in the same small box he'd chosen to live in. And I had to make a hard decision. I had to limit my time with him. I had to stop sharing my dreams with someone who couldn't see what I could see. And that was difficult because he was family. But your future self doesn't have toxic people in their life, even if they're related to you. Your future self has boundaries. Your future self protects their mind, their energy, their vision from people who want to diminish it. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or think you're better than anyone. It just means you become selective. You become protective of who has access to your mind. Because here's the thing, you can be influenced or you can be controlled. And most people let others control them without even realizing it. Someone makes a comment about your goals, and suddenly you're questioning yourself. Someone expresses doubt, and suddenly you're doubting. Someone tells you to be realistic, and suddenly you're shrinking your vision. That's control. And your future self doesn't allow that. Instead, your future self has deliberately designed their environment. And by environment, I mean the physical space you live in and the social space you occupy. Both matter enormously. Your future self has books on the shelf, not just decorations. Your future self has inspiring images around them, not depressing news on all day. Your future self has their phone set up to support their goals, not distract from them. But more than the physical environment, your future self has surrounded themselves with people who make them better, with mentors who've been where they want to go, with peers who are on the same growth path, with communities that celebrate progress instead of mediocrity. I learned this lesson from a man who became my mentor. He told me, Jim, if you want to be successful, go where successful people go. If you want to be healthy, hang around healthy people. If you want to be wealthy, find wealthy people and learn from them. And I took that advice seriously. I started going to different places. I started attending seminars and conferences instead of bars and parties. I started joining groups and organizations where people were building businesses instead of complaining about their bosses. And at first, I felt completely out of place. These people were smarter than me, more accomplished than me, further ahead than me. I was the least successful person in the room. And that's exactly where I needed to be. Because here's what happens when you're the least successful person in your circle. You get pulled up. You get exposed to new ideas. You hear conversations that expand your thinking. You see what's possible that you couldn't see before. But when you're the most successful person in your circle, you get pulled down. You become the teacher instead of the student. You stop growing because you're too busy defending what you already know. Your future self understood this and made the hard choice to step into rooms where they felt uncomfortable, where they didn't have all the answers, where they had to stretch to keep up. And I want to be clear about something. This isn't about abandoning everyone in your life. It's not about becoming cold or isolated. It's about understanding that association is powerful, and you have to be intentional about it. You can still love people from a distance. You can still care about people without spending all your time with them. You can still be kind and generous without letting others drain your energy and derail your dreams. Your future self has mastered this balance. They've learned to be loving but firm, compassionate but boundaried, connected but selective. So as you step into 2026, ask yourself this: who are the 5 people you're spending the most time with? Are they making you better or keeping you comfortable? Are they challenging you to grow or confirming your limitations? Are they dreaming bigger or settling for less? Because whoever they are, that's who you're becoming. And if you don't like where that's leading, you've got to make some changes. Not someday. Not when it's convenient. Now. Today. Your future self is waiting for you in a different room with different people, having different conversations. And the only way to get there is to have the courage to leave where you are. So we've talked about identity, about daily disciplines, about the people you surround yourself with. But now I want to share with you the mental shift that ties all of this together. It's the difference between thinking toward something and thinking from something. Most people think toward their goals. They stand where they are, look at where they want to be, and think about all the steps it's going to take to get there. And from that perspective, everything looks hard. Everything looks far away. Everything looks uncertain. But your future self doesn't think that way. Your future self thinks from the end result, not toward it. Let me explain what I mean. When you're making a decision right now, today, you probably consult your current feelings. You ask yourself what you want to do, what sounds good, what feels comfortable, and that's exactly why you keep getting the same results. Your current feelings are generated by your current circumstances, and your current circumstances were created by your past decisions. So you're stuck in this loop where your past keeps creating your present, and your present keeps recreating your past. But when you start thinking from your future self, everything changes. You start making decisions by asking, what would the person I'm becoming do in this situation? And that person isn't consulting their feelings. That person is consulting their vision. I learned this from watching successful people make decisions. They don't ask if something is easy or hard. They don't ask if they feel like doing it. They ask if it moves them closer to where they're going. And if it does, they do it. If it doesn't, they don't. It's that simple. There's no drama, no negotiation with themselves, no waiting for motivation. They've already made the decision about who they are and what they're about, so each individual choice is just an expression of that larger commitment. I watched a young woman do this in a way that really impressed me. She was working 2 jobs, trying to save money to start her business. And she got invited to go on a vacation with her friends. It was going to cost her about $2,000, money she didn't really have, money she'd been saving. And all her friends were pressuring her, telling her she needed to live a little, that she worked too hard, that she deserved a break. And she could have justified it. She could have said, I'll make it up later, or I need this for my mental health, or any number of reasonable sounding excuses. But she didn't. She said no. And when I asked her how she made that decision, she said something brilliant. She said, I didn't make the decision. The woman I'm becoming already made it. That woman doesn't spend money she doesn't have on temporary pleasure. That woman invests in her future. I'm just honoring who I already am. See that? She wasn't trying to become disciplined. She was being the disciplined person she'd already decided to be. And that's the shift. That's the mental framework that changes everything. Your future self has already faced every obstacle you're facing right now and made it through. From their perspective, these problems are already solved. These challenges are already overcome. This difficult season is already in the past. And when you adopt that perspective, when you think from that place instead of toward it, your whole emotional experience changes. The obstacles don't feel as heavy because you know you're going to get through them. The setbacks don't feel as devastating because you know they're temporary and they're building something in you. The hard decisions don't feel as confusing because you know which choice aligns with who you're becoming. You're not hoping things will work out. You're knowing they will because from where your future self stands, they already have. Now, this doesn't mean you won't face difficulties. Your future self faced plenty of them. But here's the difference. Your future self is grateful for those difficulties because they shaped them into who they needed to become. The problems built character. The failures taught lessons. The rejections redirected them toward better opportunities. Your current self might look at challenges and say, why is this happening to me? But your future self looks at the same challenges and says, this is happening for me. See the shift? It's not just positive thinking. It's a fundamental reframing of what difficulties mean. I went through a period in my life where everything seemed to fall apart at once. My business was struggling. I had relationship problems. My health wasn't great. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is it. This is the end of everything I've worked for. But something in me shifted. Instead of asking, how do I get out of this? I started asking, what is this making me into? And that question changed everything. I realized that the person I needed to become to build the life I wanted, that person had to go through exactly what I was going through. The struggle wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The difficulty wasn't evidence that I was on the wrong path. It was evidence that I was being forged into someone capable of walking the right path. And when you see setbacks that way, when you reframe them from your future self's perspective, they lose their power to stop you. They become stepping stones instead of roadblocks. They become education instead of evidence of failure. They become the very thing that qualifies you for what's coming next. Your future self knows this. Your future self looks back at today and sees all the ways this difficult moment was actually the turning point. And you can access that perspective right now by choosing to think from that place instead of from where you are. So here's what I want you to understand as we bring all of this together. Your future self isn't somewhere in the distance waiting for you to arrive through years of effort and struggle. That version of you is available right now, today, this moment. It's not about becoming, it's about being. It's about making the decision that you are already that person, and then living from that identity in every choice you make, every day you wake up, every moment you have the opportunity to choose who you're going to be.